The Burger King is sick and could be heading to a collapse. Yet it and McDonald's hate each other's guts and are fighting a full-fledged war. Burger King has gone through different hands and there is always a loss on the horizon for every success it has. So with the company's fortune fluctuating, the big question is, who would eventually win the burger wars? Oh, that is good. That's better, Oprah Winfrey said as she bit into her burger on stage during one of her comedic performances. However, not everything about Burger King is good. The business has had issues. A lot of issues. Heck, it didn't even begin as Burger King. It all began in Jackson, Florida in 1953, when Keith J. Kramer and Matthew Burns, his uncle-in-law, visited McDonald's first store in San Bernardino, California, and saw how they operated. The two men entered the fast food market when they discovered the Insta-machines. One of the Insta-machines, which they called the Insta-Broiler, was a kind of oven that allowed them to cook many burgers in a go. So the founders took the name Insta Burger King as an homage to the Insta-machines that made their operations so efficient. Within the first year of operations, the owners had begun to franchise, and their decision to franchise cost them their company. Franchisees James McLemore and David Edgerton hated the Insta-Broiler machine as it quickly had mechanical faults which delayed their operations. However, before they found an alternative way of cooking the burgers, James discovered that one of their rivals was cooking and selling a giant burger in 1957. Sensing an opportunity, James introduced the idea to the business, but there was a risk. The price of this new burger, which they called the Whopper, would be higher than usual at 37 cents. However, the business went along with it, and it was a big hit. But James and David were still struggling with the Insta-machines, and in their frustration, they pulled a bold move in 1959. The two men noticed that the business was struggling, and they swooped in, buying it from the founders. Immediately, they got to work. They improved the Insta-machines and designed them to cook the burgers on an open flame rather than the more popular heated griddles. Their method of cooking burgers made them taste unique and added grill marks to the burgers, which would become their signature. The two men changed the name of the company to Burger King, and they had one goal in mind. They wanted to expand faster and have a national look, and decided franchising was the way to go. The two men began to sell rights to large territories all over America for a fee and a tiny percentage of sales. They didn't care what the franchises did in those territories and even allowed them to expand as they wished in those locations. Little did they know that this would cause problems for the business in the future. But their expansion drive wasn't done without other improvements, even if one of their more iconic ones happened accidentally. They introduced a new item, the Whopper Junior, by accident. In 1963, one of their first franchise owners outside the United States, Luis Arenas Perez, was opening his store in San Juan, Puerto Rico. But there was a problem. The Whopper buns wouldn't arrive for the opening of his store. Luis had to think fast, and he had an idea. He used the smaller available buns, and his customers loved the new burger. Eventually, the company introduced it to all its stores, and this new burger became known as the Whopper Junior. However, it wasn't all of their mistakes that turned out well for the company. The corporation's expansion soon had a little setback when it tried to expand into Illinois. In Illinois, a small burger business trademarked the name Burger King in 1959 in the small town of Mattoon. So when Burger King came with their brand in the 60s, the small business fought back and won. The courts declared that the burger chain giant could not establish any store within a 20-mile radius around Mattoon. However, the chain wasn't used to taking no for an answer. When it tried to approach the smaller business for permission to put stores around them, it got a resounding no. And if you like to learn about the history of your favorite eateries, be sure to subscribe for more content like this. But this didn't stop the company from expanding in other places, and due to the loose expansion method which the two businessmen adopted, the business had around 274 locations. This gave them an advantage when they decided to sell to Pillsbury, a prepared foods industry leader, for $18 million. Pillsbury bought a lot of problems with its purchase of the business. The new owner was also keen to expand, and it set its sights on the international market. In 1969, it opened its first Canadian store in Windsor, Ontario. 2 years later, it opened another store in Australia through its franchisee Jack Cowan. However, the company soon discovered that it couldn't use its name Burger King in Australia, as a small business had registered the name. It was the Illinois situation all over again. However, this time the corporation was careful not to do anything that would lead it to go to court, so it asked Jack to choose from its list of alternatives. Jack chose the name Hungry Jack's, which would eventually grow to over 450 locations in Australia. Jack would give the corporation headaches later on, but more on that in a bit. While Pillsbury was pursuing international expansion, it had to deal with enemies within. James and David had given franchise owners the liberty to do as they wished without really checking on them. This led to an image problem for Burger King. There were inconsistencies in how the business operated, and Pillsbury wanted to stop this. But it got a rude awakening. The franchises had gotten too powerful. It got to a situation where Billy and Jimmy Trotter, two rich Louisiana siblings who got their first store in 1963, began to compete with Pillsbury openly. They appeared to believe that they could do a better job than Pillsbury. They formed their own business, got some new locations, and even bought the steakhouse companies named Charthouse. Then they got cocky. The siblings had about 351 stores that they controlled and offered to buy Burger King from Pillsbury, but it resisted. It decided to launch its counteroffensive, but had to wait until the Trotters made a mistake, and soon they did. The Trotters went to buy other business locations belonging to other franchisees. They purchased 13 stores in Houston and 9 in Boston. It was the "we got you" moment that Pillsbury was waiting for, and it took the brothers to court. The two businesses had to come to a compromise, as the Trotters had to drop the 9 stores in Boston for the 13 in Houston, but Pillsbury had just begun. It shopped for hard executives and got its answer in Donald Smith, who was one of the executives in line to head McDonald's. Smith changed many things about the business as he began to ensure that the operations were centralized as much as possible. The new head created rules that prevented the franchisees from getting too powerful. Also, he tracked quality and created regional franchise offices to monitor franchisees' activities. Through his efforts, there were repeated scheduled and unscheduled inspections on the franchisees. Under Smith, the company continued to expand abroad, even if it hadn't gotten profitable yet. The company opened its first European store in Madrid. The new head reintroduced the drive-thru and also changed the menu to fit customer categories. Smith also kept an eye on the competition, and when he noticed they were adding a breakfast menu, he tried to do the same. But Burger King equipment wouldn't allow it. Rather than buy new equipment, the CEO modified the breakfast menu. However, it wouldn't truly be a hit until he left. And when Smith left in the 1980s, everything began to crack. The new head followed Smith's philosophy, but the company returned to an era of brand and image inconsistency as the new CEOs didn't stick around for long. Most of the new heads preferred to own franchises rather than manage the business as a whole. The business also didn't help itself with its advertisements and soon ran into trouble with McDonald's and Wendy's in one of its controversial ad campaigns. Despite the problems, the business continued to operate and expand. It gained more international presence with stores in Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, Caracas, Venezuela, Santiago, Chile, and Buenos Aires, Argentina in the late 70s and early 80s. However, in 1989, after spending time resisting, the British company Grand Metropolitan plc bought Pillsbury. Under the new owner, things became better after an initial mixed start. The new owner removed certain underperforming menu items and closed down underperforming stores. While gains were recorded, the corporation had to deal with another stubborn franchise owner. This time, it was Jack Cowan, their franchise owner in Australia. Jack resisted the brand from entering Australia. The business sued Jack but lost, and can now only provide administrative support to the Hungry Jacks. Grand Metropolitan plc merged with Guinness to form Diageo, and sold the business to Texas Pacific Group in 2002. Eventually, Diageo agreed to sell Burger King. Texas Pacific Group, along with Bain Capital and Goldman Sachs Capital Partners, purchased the fast food chain for $1.5 billion in late 2002. The new owners began to reposition the business, change the menu, introduce new ad campaigns, and improve independent stores. Also, the owners brought plans to rebrand the stores, and it was working until the financial crisis of 2007 to 2010 ruined the progress it made, and the Texas Pacific Group had to sell to 3G Capital. 3G Capital bought Tim Hortons of Canada and continues to look at expanding further, but it has to deal with its low-selling businesses. The company has begun making provisions to close these locations since 2019 and projects to close around 250 each year. Will this improve the company's fortunes? This remains to be seen. Burger King has been through it, yet it is still standing and is hovering around the third largest food franchise. The brand is dragging its weight despite facing heavyweights like McDonald's. But will it survive McDonald's dominance, or will it fail like others have? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support our channel.